Hello, everybody. Welcome to City Lights. I'm Peter Maravellis, your host, and to those of you online, hello to you too, and thank you for joining us as well. As always, we are beaming to you from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Ramaytush peoples. It is always an honor and a privilege to be able to do so. Tonight is a homecoming of sorts. It has been many, many years since we've had James Janko, but also not just James Janko, but Maxine Han Kingston, the two of them together in this very room. It has been over a decade. And so this is very auspicious in ever so many ways, a great honor. And of course, to be celebrating The Wire Walker, published by Regal House, is another great, wonderful pleasure for us here at City Lights. James is, of course, a great activist writer, and Maxine and James have a very unique relationship. They're both really incredible activist writers, and they have kind of been playing off of each other for many, many years. And I guess you'll really get to kind of experience them tonight in a really great way. James, of course, is the award-winning author of the novels Buffalo Boy and Geronimo, What We Don't Talk About, and The Clubhouse Thief. His short stories have appeared in the Massachusetts Review, The Sun, the Eureka Literary Magazine, amongst many others. He has received numerous honors for his work. These include the Jeff Charlotte Memorial Award, the Illinois Arts Council Award for Fiction, amongst others. His novel, The Wire Walker, was a finalist for the Donald L. Jordan Prize for Literary Excellence and the Zank Fiction Prize, and was awarded the Juniper Prize by the University of Massachusetts Press. Maxine Han Kingston needs little introduction. She's, of course, the award-winning author of books The Woman Warrior, China, Man and Tripmaster Monkey. She has received numerous honors for her work. In 2013, she was awarded the National Medal of Arts by the President of the United States at that time, Barack Obama. We will be hosting a Q&A towards the end of the evening. And of course, Mr. Janko and Ms. Kingston will be signing books. And you may find those at the front counter. And the way we're going to arrange this is once you've paid for the books, bring them over, and we're trying to get everyone to the left side of the room, stage left. And that's how we're going to hold it tonight. So we're going to begin by Mr. Janko saying a few words. Welcome to City Lights.
Thank you, Peter. It's really an honor to be here with you and Maxine and with everyone in the store and joining online. I want to begin the night with a quote from author Umar al-Akhar, and in his great book, One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This, he notes that many of the Westerners doing the active work in opposing genocide are Jews. And I want to add that my Jewish Israeli friends are doing the same. This event coincides with Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And so a wish, may there be justice and peace for everyone between the Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea. It's a big wish. There are 7 million Jews and 7 million Palestinians in this little strip of land. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maxine, and she's going to begin the reading. Thank you.
Hello. I'm going to begin with Ulysses, Odysseus. It took 20 years for him to go to war, fight the war, and to come back. 20 years. And that number of years that go by between leaving for this life-changing event and then the ability to come home, 20 years, that is in the human psyche. It's when you meet people who've been traumatized, a lot of times it's 20 years go by before they even remember that it happened or before they're able to tell other people about it. And so, so um, telling people about it is something that Odysseus did all after the war. As he went home, everybody he met, he would tell what had gone before. And at the homecoming, that was when he was able to tell his wife and and his son uh, uh, what had happened. It took that long to be able to face and put into conscious words, and and it's a kind of reconciliation when one is able to face and and understand what was going on. So it was 20 years after the American war in Vietnam when Thich Nhat Hanh uh, decided to have a gathering in which he invited American veterans and Vietnamese veterans to get together. And 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 so at that gathering, there they meditated together. They they had walking meditation together. They had hugging meditation together, and 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 I was there too, but I didn't do any hugging because they were all men and monks. So so I was watching, but I participated in several of these gatherings, and then I thought, you know, I think these veterans need more than just this meditation or Buddhism. Uh, I think they need to tell their stories. They need to write their stories, and that will be a way to change consciousness, to come to understanding, to come to the reconciliation that happens in a story, and so within Thich Nhat Hanh's organization, I started the Veteran Writers Group. And so that was when I met Jimmy because he showed up for that and wrote his stories. Okay, so a few years went by, and then I get a call from the BBC, and they said they wanted to uh, do a program on the Veteran Writers Group, and so they wanted uh, to fly us to France, where Thich Nhat Hanh has a monastery, and so yeah, so Jimmy and Ted Sexauer were the two veterans from the West that went, and then from the East Coast we brought Dan Thompson and Jerry Crawford, and so. Uh, so we all go to France, and we are going to be with Thich Nhat Hanh at Plum Village, and so so here's what happened. I wrote about this in my book, The Fifth Book of Peace. We had a silent lunch. Then the veterans and I went to tea with Thich Nhat Hanh. The vets named the cabin where he stays when he's at Plum Village Ty's Hooch. Let me see. I'm trying to excerpt this. The attendant monk poured tea and handed each cup to Ty, who bowed and passed it on. We also bowed, accepted the tea. All was still. After sipping and sitting for quite a while, Tai said, "The true miracle is that we are drinking tea together." He was exactly right. We were having a miracle. We had been through Vietnam and we had been through America. And out of all time and all space and births and deaths, these particular beings meet. I sat next to Tai. Sister Chong Kom asked me whether Plum Village lived up to my expectations. I said I felt at home. I loved being welcomed home. But I expected 1,000,000 daffodils. In the spring, she said. I said spring and summertime and winter. Come back in the spring for the millions of daffodils and the plum trees in blossom. Tai said, "You can stop time." He was very sure and serious. It was a statement of fact and a command. I can stop time. He said stop. Many times when we were with him, he would say stop. And I think he would say it, stop having that chaos in your brain. And he would say, stop. And he meant stop your suffering. That caused a argument in our group because Ted Sexauer kept saying he's not honoring our suffering. He's telling me to stop suffering. I mean, they had they argued about that. And the other thing was this idea that we can stop time. James Janko said to Tai, "You spoke of the importance of not running away from one's culture, one's ancestors, one's spiritual home." When I was a medic in Vietnam, I went to the war with a lot of pride in my country. I felt it was the best country in the world, that we would never harm other people. I believed we represented democracy. And after I saw the really indescribable destruction as a medic, all kinds of wounds, not only people, but the large areas of the earth just destroyed, I feel that I got stripped from my culture, that I no longer felt a kind of connection that could nourish me from my culture. What I want to ask you is, in your perception of American culture today, do you see something positive that perhaps I cannot see? Something that might truly nourish people, and something that is not just another advertisement, another plug for materialism. In the long pause, Tai not answering him, Jimmy laughed and said, I can just ask myself that too. Tai said, ask her. He opened his hand at me. I answered, well, you know, America has produced you, Jimmy. It produced these people. It produced me. And we are wonderful products of American culture. And we have great ideas, such as the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, which I see as rights to be practiced. Speak, write, assemble, build a sangha. The First Amendment is prescriptive. They are our American precepts. Sister Chong Kom, she's Thich Nhat Hanh's right-hand woman. She said, the fact that you come so far and eager to learn, to see deep, to understand deeply, to love deeply, and to live in peace and harmony. That is a hidden treasure of America. And that people like you, if you look deeper, you found you are not the lonely people. Everywhere in the United States, many seek of hidden treasure. They learn to respect the earth. They learn to respect the ecosystem. They learn to learn many deep things. Jimmy spoke again, his hair sticking up high and higher. Yeah, it's true, he said. And I think we are the freest people in the world. But I also feel that with the enormous influence that we have in the world, I also feel that because of the enormous influence of American culture, that we really do cause a lot of suffering throughout the world, and that we need to be aware of that. That's not to take away what we do, what we can build with the freedoms that we are given. They're to be used to alleviate suffering. Tai spoke about suffering, which is the first subject of the Four Noble Truths. America is an open society. It has the ability to open itself to the world, to the other influences. It's not whole yet. So America can renew herself quite easily, more than many other societies. Suffering is also very important. You need to suffer in order to learn from your suffering. We may suffer uselessly, but if we look deeply into our suffering, we can learn a lot from that. Oh, he's talking about you can renew. Uh, that's another idea of Rosh Hashanah. It's a time when we can renew. Um, okay, so then there was, here's another thing that Thich Nhat Hanh said to the veterans. You are a veteran, but you are more than a veteran. You have to remember that, and all of us, Vietnamese and Americans, we are war veterans. All of us have suffered. So you have to remember that you are whole human beings, not just veterans. That apply for me and for you also. Don't say, I am only a veteran. I am more than that. I have to be able not only to help myself, but to help my sister, my brother, my child, my society, because I have the responsibility of a brother, a father, a teacher, a sister, and mother. I cannot just imprison myself in my own suffering. I have to transform it. Okay, so then it was Thanksgiving Day, and we had been at Plum Village eating vegetarian food and not smoking and not drinking, and then we had this thing that we wanted to escape, and so Ted Sexauer found a house off away from the monastery, and it said pizza on the front. But he went out in there and he negotiated a Thanksgiving dinner. And so we escaped from the monastery, and we had this wonderful Thanksgiving, and we had wine that's just made from the grapes of the area, and we had cheese that was from the Dordogne caves, and we had these gigantic chickens that looked like turkeys, and then it was time to go home or back to the monastery, and so we got into the car and drove off. And then we thought, where's Jimmy? He's not in the car. We've left him. Or maybe he decided he didn't want to go back to that monastery. And so when we found out he was missing, we found a van and went back to look for him. And we rode back to Plum Village. And we had driven off without Jimmy. He met some people from Spain and asked in Spanish for a ride to Village Prunier. Meanwhile, the vets noticed that he was MIA. The Spaniard's car with Jimmy in it passed us. When at last everyone was regathered, Jimmy said, "No wonder we lost the war." Other vets did not think that was funny, and he had to apologize. At Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh taught us a hugging meditation. And when we got back here, we taught it to the other veterans in our group. I asked Jimmy to help me demonstrate what we had learned at Plum Village. He and I stood in a spot of overhead light. I said, hugging meditation is an American contribution to Buddhist ritual. Thich Nhat Hanh invented it at a civil rights and peace march. An exuberant Black woman gave him a tremendous hug. She didn't know you weren't supposed to hug a monk. Ty stood there like a stick, not hugging her in return. Mulling over what he should have done, he invented hugging meditation. Now he would hug an American vet and say, when you hug one Vietnamese person, you hug all Vietnamese people. And then I thought, but I didn't say it. When you hug Americans who are from everywhere, you hug all the people of the earth. Actually, what I thought was, when you hug one American, you're hugging all Americans. Jimmy and I turned toward and looked at each other, noticing at least one wonderful quality of the being who stood before us. We smiled and bowed. A lotus for you, Buddha to be. We stepped toward each other, put our arms around this dear person, and hugged, breathing 3 mindful breaths, then parted and bowed again. Jimmy and I went up to other people and bowed and hugged. It was like a snowball dance in high school. Soon everybody was hugging everybody. Oh, Jeremiah, psycho dog, ex-gang member, he's right there. And woman vet, and a woman vet, no, I've lost my place. Let's see. Okay, Jeremiah, psycho dog, ex-gang member, and woman vet, cop, and they hugged each other. And this woman vet was a cop. So gang member and cops reconciled. Okay. So let's see. And so, okay. I think that's enough of an introduction to Jimmy.
Sure. Thank you, Maxine. I was last in Palestine just January, February of this year, and I want to acknowledge somebody that I was there with, Keaton, right here. Knew her as HR2. Everybody had a name. I was Ray when I was there. So I first went to Nablus, Palestine, where most of my book takes place in 2017. And I went there because I don't think you'll guess, because they have a great circus and a theater. And I met Mahmoud Masri, who's the founder of the circus. And I met his 3 kids, his wife, and I also met Mohammed Shafi, his cousin, the manager of the circus. Then and now, he's the manager of this circus. It's a fabulous place for the youth in Nablus. And Mohammed took me all around Nablus, and one place he took me to was the Balata Refugee Camp in Nablus. And there are approximately 30,000 Palestinians living inside 1 square mile. I remember stepping into a Balata alley, and the visible sky over me, a faint blue line. It was a tightrope sky, a tightrope sky. That's what they have for sky, most people in Balata. So I knew I would write a novel called The Wire Walker. The narrator is a 16-year-old girl, and of all the voices that I've heard as a novelist, as a story writer, hers is the clearest that has ever come to me. And so if you read this book, you will hear her voice in your own way. For now, my voice. I've seen sparrows and hawks in the tightrope sky over our camp. Wings, yes, wings, straight up over this alley. Skinny as a circus rope, or almost our sky hemmed by walls. Birds cross our tightrope sky into the open sky, the wide blue or gray, and I can only guess where and when they plan to alight. If I could rise with wings and ride the winds over our camp, over Nablus and its mountains, I would fly west toward the sea, the point of Jaffa, where my grandfather was born. I visited the world beyond the Balata camp in Nablus through YouTube. I've seen the Mediterranean Sea on a screen the size of my palm, but I will remain ignorant until I feel it on my body. My grandfather was born in Jaffa. His ancestors lived there for 6 centuries, but now he too is a stranger to the sea. I love my grandfather for many reasons. He's the only adult in Balata who believes me, or at least listens, when I promise I'll be in a professional circus someday. The best high wire walker in the Middle East, if not the world. And she makes good in that. If you ask where I live, I might point to my alley or point to a wire. Sometimes my friend Maisa, a contortionist, shakes the wire I'm walking, or tries to swing it out from under me, so I can test my limits, find new limits. I watch YouTube, study what the great aerialists can do, and afterwards I practice copy before I find my own way to walk, fall, jump, fly. Sometimes I set my wire less than a meter over the ground, so Maisa can straddle it. I walk toward my friend, pause, crouch, her signal to hunch down so I can leapfrog over her and fly home to my wire. Sure, I fell in the dust 1,001 times before I learned how to do this. I've been taught not to brag, but I will say this in writing. I am brilliant on a wire. Now, Amal lives with her mother and her grandfather Saeed and her twin brother Isam in one room, but they make it into an apartment with plywood and curtains. I'm going to read from a scene that takes place at about 10 o'clock at night. And Amal is in the bed she shares with her mother. On a Friday night, I hear whispers through the wall that separates our bedrooms. No, says Grandpa Said, how can this help? You should take risks only when something can be gained. Isam is about to slip into our alley and other alleys, as he does on most nights, to meet with his cohorts. The boys are men who devise plans to strike back against the settlers and soldiers who encircle Fire Mountain, the city of Nablus. I doubt my brother carries a weapon other than rage. Grandpa Said says, you imagine things can get no worse, but I assure you they can. And what will you do? Throw stones at a guard post, a jeep? I am sorry, says Isam. You'll be worse than sorry if you're arrested. Boys spend years in jail for nothing more serious than throwing stones. But stones are serious. They are hard and have no room to breathe, but they are what we know best. When someone dies in our alley, the men pass the body through the windows of our homes till they reach a street wide enough for a funeral procession. The dead, washed and wrapped, pass through windows, as do brides on their way to weddings. Alive or dead, we can fit almost anywhere. A stone is serious, and so is a bride, a corpse. So is my twin brother who tries hard to grow a mustache. So is my grandfather, though he is very old. I wonder who Isam is about to meet, friends from school, other stone throwers, or men who will give him guns. For throwing a stone, a kid can get up to 20 years in prison. 20 years. Amal, in the course of this novel, she is detained 3 times. She's never detained for throwing stones. First time she's detained, it's for walking on the barrel of a tank. It sounds very improbable, but in the book, it's the only thing that can happen at that time. It was reported, I think, in March of this year that tanks were in the West Bank for the first time in 20 years. And I think they meant the first time in combat in Tulkarm and Jenin. But tanks were in the West Bank in the timeline of the story, 2019 and 2020, for training purposes and intimidation. Let's see. Okay, so this chapter is called Interrogation. The room is clean and white and smells of disinfectant. I sit on a metal stool in front of a desk. A woman in a green uniform on my left, and an enormous woman, doughy and round, a balloon or a baby in her belly, sits across from me in an oversized leather chair. Name, ID, I won't give her much else. Some years ago, she says, your grandfather spent more than 4 months in custody. The fact that we sometimes release detainees without filing charges does not mean they did nothing wrong. I remain silent. Occupation forces separate right from wrong, Israelis from Palestinians. If they could, they would tell the sun when to rise, when to set, when to separate from our few scraps of earth and shine on their skyscrapers and forests and fields, and the moon would need permission to pass through checkpoints in the sky, as would the clouds and every drop of rain. Maybe there will come a day when every Palestinian will be a contortionist on a wire. Now, the second time that she is detained, she's in solitary confinement. She doesn't even know what prison she is in. I am led to a cell with 2 doors. The second one a step beyond the first. After removing my handcuffs, the guard says, "Duck," shoves me through, and the doors click shut. My eyes grow big, but no light comes in. I feel around for a blanket in the corner, a bucket of water half filled, a hole in a cement floor. Everything is cement, except for the hole, the stink coming up. I'm sealed. I do a humpback walk, 3 steps forward, 3 back, my head brushing the ceiling. They will kill me before they break me. I pause when I hear this inside me. Am I as brave as my words, or are they just words? How dead are the dead? Can they celebrate their bravery when they're gone? Every Palestinian, whether or not she's been detained, knows that a confession for an interrogator is better than a dead body, a slack tongue. I wonder, though, if a cell this dark, a cell this dark, this small, is unusual. My interrogator and I share one thing: patience. He could have me killed, drain the blood, cut the breath, and call it suicide. In a minute, maybe less, a corpse. Confessions take time. Now, Nablus is in a valley between 2 beautiful mountains, Charzim and Mount Ebal. And the Israelis think that Amal knows something about explosives hidden on Mount Ebal. So she doesn't know the prison she's in, but it's Hashron in Israel. And they take her blindfolded in a helicopter. And then when they get to Mount Ebal, they take the blinders off, let her see. And she has a military escort. Near the crest of Mount Ebal, I walk with 12 soldiers under the open sky of an afternoon. A jeep follows in our wake, and 3 more some 30 meters ahead of us. Machines rattle the earth while the sun makes a spark of me. I walk in mountain light, yellow and gold. I'm not sure what prison I was in, but they ferried me here blindfolded in a helicopter. I kept trying to see beneath the cloth, or through it to hills, trees, roads, villages, landscapes. They darkened my eyes, but I tasted the sky of Palestine. Would they remove my tongue if they knew? Amal's grandfather is a very influential character. And Amal lost her father at age 4. And she doesn't find out until well into the book what happened. I'm not going to spill that secret. But in this scene, which is the spring of 2020, Grandpa Seed is telling her how her father saw the situation, the occupation. Your father said to me once, every time there's a bombing, Israel's leaders mourn the dead on one side of their hearts and celebrate on the other. The violence, the dead, they're dead. Give them permission to do as they wish with the world's blessing. Imagine a man in a box, no room to stretch, so he grows smaller or tries to, until the day blows himself up, scatters in all directions. Whoosh! He divides himself, leaves the box by exploding out of it. And maybe he kills a few of his enemies, which gives Israeli leaders permission to come after us, any of us, and to lock us in jails, innocent or not, and to plow our trees and crops into the earth, or to annex us, to take our hills and vineyards and fields to be their hills and vineyards and fields, to raise Palestine hectare by hectare. Now, in this book, Amal, she has a dream of being in a professional circus. And in the summer of 2019, she gets to go to Tel Aviv. First, she makes a friend online, a Jewish Israeli juggler named Tali Glazman. And it's a very delicate but deep friendship that they have. And she also befriends Tali's mother, Rebecca Glazman. And late in the book, Rebecca sends Amal a letter. And I would like Maxine to read, well, it's a long letter, to read part of that letter.
There would be no point in telling you how my husband died, but I will tell you how he lived. He opposed the occupation of Palestine and tried in large and small ways to correct a disaster. Jacob could not understand why the Jewish people, who suffered more than 2,000 years of persecution that culminated in the Holocaust, would willingly, systematically displace others and make their lives difficult or impossible. His parents and mine, to survive, had to come here, but Jacob never forgot who they and other refugees displaced. Palestine has been shredded. This includes you, Amal, your family, your relatives, the Balata camp, the other camps, the diaspora, the ongoing catastrophe. When will it end? Who will end it and how? Amal, my views often differed from those of my husband. Jacob and I used to argue about everything, but over time, and despite his loss, which I still can't bear, I've drawn closer to his heart. At this point, most Israelis seldom, if ever, consider the fate of Palestinians. As a nation, we have backed away from our deepest truth. The Holocaust ends when the suffering ends.
Yeah. And the Holocaust ends when the suffering ends. Again, there are 7 million Jews and 7 million Palestinians on this little strip of land. And I want to tell you about an event happening tomorrow and invite you to take a flyer. It's at 5 o'clock at Senator Schiff's office. Poets to Padilla and Schiff, the world cries out, let Gaza live, block the bombs, protect journalists. and poets will read. Maxine will be there. I will be there. I'm going to read I'm going to read poetry by Musab Abu Toha, whose first book was published at City Lights. I'll be reading from his work. And Jenny Lim, Poet Laureate of San Francisco, Devorah Major, who is also a Poet Laureate, Alejandro Murguia, first Latinx San Francisco Poet Laureate, Kimi Sugioka, Alameda Poet Laureate, Kathleen Herman, Poet Laureate of Vallejo, Paul Flores, American Book Award recipient, and Kirk Lumpkin. So again, that's 5 to 6:30 tomorrow. One post that's right at Market in Montgomery, right by the BART station there. So I'm going to read just one more thing about Amal because this girl, she tells the reader what she is about. She knows her purpose in this world, and she tells you in plain terms to humble every man with a gun, everyone with power. That's why I was born. That's where she comes from. And this girl, she weighs 42 kilos, but she is a force. She is a force. And about her size, she's watched the great wire walker Philip Petit on YouTube. She's studied him. She's studied all the great wire walkers. But she says, I would like to have a long balance pole like Philip Petit, a great wire walker I've studied on YouTube. Instead, I have my arms. I think of them as wings and something else. Does a body stop where the skin stops? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If I walk well, careful and quiet, I can feel all around me the shape of the air, the sky, and I grow larger than myself. Something I can't name, something shiny moves inside me and beyond me. If people say I'm small, it's because their eyes are small. All they see is some skin that slips over me like a stocking. They're missing the light around the body, the part of me no bullet can harm. The calmer I am, the shinier I am. I believe Philip Petit and other great aerialists would know what I mean. So, so I'll open it up now, and don't forget to, please take one of these, and maybe they can be, maybe they can be passed back. Um, but, um, but yeah, we'll get these to you one way or the other. Okay, so there. Yeah.
Oh, can I start with the first question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So when you were trying to get the book published, uh, I wrote a blurb for this book so that the agent can send it around and try to get a publisher. And what I wrote is that the wire walker is the Palestinian Anne Frank. And that was a big mistake. Okay, Jimmy, would you like to talk about the process of getting this book published?
Well, nobody who looks like me and as old as me can be Palestinian. You know. so so yeah, I mean it was it's a very complicated thing because we probably all have we know of cultural appropriation, and it's we appropriated this land, for example, that we're sitting on today. And cultural appropriation, it's not a thing of the past. And I feel like people that have been colonized and oppressed, enslaved, and people, the millions who still are, they want to tell their own stories in their own ways, their own voices. I respect that. I respect that so much. And yet, fiction writing, to me, it's all about empathy and imagination. And there has to also be room for crossing over. Um, I don't think we get very far if everybody writes autobiography. We have the form called the memoir. We have autobiographical novels, but the rest of fiction would be gone. And all that crossing over, that empathy. And I feel like, let me give you a couple of quotes. The first one, Mahmoud Darwish, it's from a poem called My Mother's House. A hole in the wall was enough for the stars to teach you the hobby of staring into the eternal. And here's from Whitman, I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. And so, my own feeling is that, this world we live in, this cosmos, is far more intimate than we can fathom. And so, it might seem a leap for me to write in this voice, and I had to read it in my voice, which is inherently awkward, but there's nothing, I don't consider it unusual at all. And I will say that I tried several times to write this from a white perspective, somebody watching circus from a periphery. And when you write what you are supposed to write rather than what you need to write, it's not going to work. It won't work. So, and when I did finally hear her voice, it was actually, I had barely slept this particular night, and I was going to give up on my idea of writing about Palestine. I figured, it's not something I could possibly write about. And I think I was so tired and so haunted that I no longer ask myself the question, do I have the authority to write this story? And I, some people, write what you know. That's the maxim that people hear again and again. And I write what haunts me. I write what haunts me. I write what I truly need to write. I want to, open it up to.
Could share that. I will use this to get around the room.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Please wait
Didn't you
until I
send
get
it? Oh, didn't you send it to 99 publishers before the 100th one accepted it?
Yeah, my second agent sent it to he sent it to 99 editors, and he got silence. It was ghosted, but he got the cliche. It only takes one. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Let me
Is
kind
that
of
mic
get rid
on?
of
I
this.
don't think that mic is on. Is that on?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah, I just gotta keep it close. So please wait until I get to you, and then so folks online can hear what you have to say.
Hi there. Thank you so much for these beautiful readings. Jimmy, I want to ask you, because you created this character, this immensely sympathetic Amal, and this sympathetic view of the horrible plight of the people in the refugee camp. And yet you didn't read a lot of the part of it, but from the letter from the Israeli mom,
Yeah.
you also have an incredibly compassionate view of the dilemma of progressive Israelis. How did you manage to wend your way through those?
Um, yeah, when I went there in 2017, among the people I met were Neely Belkind, Eden Fuchs. Eden was a officer in the Israeli military for, I think, 22 years. And since his retirement, he has devoted his life really to working with Palestinians. And by the way, Israel, the population of Israel is about 21% Palestinian. And so Eren, he's part of a group standing together. He's a filmmaker. Um, Nili Belkind, she's an ethnomusicologist in Jaffa, in South Tel Aviv. And she wrote a wonderful book called Music and Conflict. But, and she has spent a lot of time in the West Bank herself, doing actually the same kind of work that Keaton and I were doing when we were in Palestine recently, being with Palestinian communities that are vulnerable and being a protective presence, in short. And so Nili, I actually spoke with her on the phone, it's about 3 weeks ago. And, remember, her family came to Palestine like her ancestors over a century ago, I believe. She was born in Tel Aviv, I believe. Definitely born in Israel, but she is so disheartened by the situation, and she calls what is happening in Gaza and the West Bank the final solution. So, we don't, there are really some powerful groups, combatants for peace. These are Palestinians and Israelis who were formerly mortal enemies, who worked together. They formed in 2005. They're an incredibly powerful group. Check them out online. Uh, um, Breaking the Silence. This is a group of former soldiers who speak out about what they saw when they were in occupied Palestine. So it really wasn't hard. And then there's one of my favorite characters in the book is Jonathan. He's a roboticist. I mean, he calls himself a machine artist, but he does art. He tries to depict the occupation through machinery, and he does these pop-up shows in Tel Aviv and Jaffa and so on. And I've read so much analysis, and I wanted to find a way to show the occupation through an art medium, in robotics. And having been in a war, I'll tell you, it's very robotic, and mostly it's men and machines. And so it makes sense to depict war through machinery. Yeah.
I have a question.
Maxine.
Okay, Jimmy, I would like to hear a San Francisco story. Uh, could you tell us about your time on Alcatraz?
Oh, I miss Alcatraz. I was a night watchman on Alcatraz for more than 13 years. I was out there by myself, The routine was, uh, go after, take the late afternoon boat, the tourists get on the boat, go back to the city, and a watchman stays. I could go anywhere, anywhere except the lighthouse. When there were storms, I used to go onto the roof of the prison. I used to put the rangers' rain gear on and go up into the storm. It was an amazing place. I read The Woman Warrior when I was an Alcatraz watchman before I met her. Before I met her. I read many great books there, and I miss the place. I think they've turned it more into a Disneyland these days. I think it costs as much as $100 to take a tour. Well, I got to stay. They paid me. Well, it was the minimum wage, but they did pay me. So, and I read great books, really great books there. Yeah, I miss it. I miss the place. Yeah.
Hi, Jim. Well, thank you so much for converting your pain into inspiring and educating people. But I know a few medics, Mike Hasty, Tit 6 Hour, Susan Schnall, and I've always been rather in awe, of your special heart But I think it's a heart that is especially wounded because of what you went through to Vietnam. And I don't know if you want to talk at all about that.
Oh, it is. You do see war in a very close up. See terrible things, and I was uh, I was in an infantry battalion commanded by Colonel George Armstrong Custer III. Uh, you can look him up, George Armstrong Custer III. And, you know, okay, but I want to say this. When I was there as a kid, um, it only took about 6 weeks, and I realized the war was really wrong. And within a few months more, I realized that war is primarily not a soldier's story because civilians bear the brunt of the violence, and the land, the waters, the animals, the entire web of life becomes a sacrifice zone in war. And I feel like on this side of the world, for the most part, our stories are imbalanced. We get soldiers' stories when they're about war, and we don't get the stories um, that are about the people that are more deeply affected. When I survived for a year, I got to come back. I got to leave. And, around 58,000 Americans died in that war. And the Vietnamese, North and South, combatants and not non-combatants, 4 million, mostly civilians, 4 million. And so, we don't even know our own stories and, what we do uh, uh, in the world. And look at the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan. It's not primarily a soldier story. These countries have been ruined, mostly civilians. Yeah.
Could you pass?
My turn. Thank you. I was just curious when and why you were drawn to Gaza and to Israel, and when you went there and why you went there.
This had the most unlikely beginning. My wife was, we were living in rural New Mexico, and she was a dialysis nurse on a Zuni reservation. And then my mom died, and it became clear that she was going to go into a nursing home, or we were going to go, my wife and I were going to go back and take care of her. So we went back her last 4 years. And, the local paper came every day, and it was mostly local news. But one day, this was probably 2016, maybe even 2015, there was an article about a circus in the Galilee for Palestinian kids and Israeli kids. In part, this article was a review of a book called Watch Out for Flying Kids. And so I read that book, and I just became fascinated. Initially, didn't think about writing about it myself, but I started reading so much about Palestine and Israel, and the fiction, the poetry, I read so much, and after a while, like what I said, I end up writing about what haunts me. That's where I go eventually, and I can kind of try not to do that, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, yeah, thank you.
I think we have time for like one more question. Yeah.
Hello. I really liked your line about Palestinians being contortionists, like the idea of like when you're a powerless person, you have to obey to fight to the powerful. Can you speak more about that line? And then can you also talk a little bit more about your trip to Palestine?
Yeah, okay. First, my recent trip where I met Keaton here and many others. We were volunteers with the International Solidarity Movement, and it's a Palestinian-led organization, and volunteers go to the West Bank, and you go to where you're invited, by Palestinian communities. So one thing I did a lot was I went out with shepherds quite a lot. Uh, just ancient hills and valleys, beautiful, but always in sight of settlement outposts. And so, you're really there as a witness and as a protective presence, and to document. If there are incidents, you have a phone. Keaton is great with a phone. Uh, I had a flip phone until right before I left, and I still don't know how to use my phone. But uh, but anyway, yeah, the work is that you're with Palestinians who request your presence, and sometimes I wondered, are we really doing anything? But they know the situation best. If they're inviting us in, um, there are reasons, there are reasons for that. And I'm still in touch with the people of Al Mughayr. And I stayed with a family, an extended family, uh, in 2 caves and 2 tents, and went shepherding every morning. And that community has been hit very hard. And recently, I came back in middle of February, but between August 21st and August 26th, Israeli settlers and soldiers bulldozed thousands of trees in a valley right outside Al Mughayr. And if you see the before and after photos, it's chilling. You see this lush valley, and then you see it just like a desert suddenly. And so, what this book is about, to get to the question about contortion, Palestinians are being pressed into smaller and smaller spaces. And, Amal, the narrator, she's an athlete. Her profession depends on her body. And to consider how the occupation affects one body, one Palestinian body, that's the way I wanted to show the occupation, through this one person. And by extension, you see what is happening to a society. It's visceral. Her best friend Mice is a contortionist, trying to learn to twist her body into impossible positions. And so, yeah, it's about space and confinement and getting wedged into smaller and smaller spaces.
Maxine on Kingston, James Janko, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.